I'm probably going to come under fire for this one, but now just every time I look at this book, all I feel is a sense of frustration with it. And it's not the fault of the book. It's not the fault of the writer either. But events out of my control just drove me to frustration with this book, to the point that by the time I finished it, I didn't feel satisfied. I felt only relief that it was finally over. But let me explain. So folks, today I will be talking about the Warhammer 40,000 novel, Eisenhorn Xenos, by Dan Abnett. Now, I have read and reviewed a few of Dan Abnett's works in the past, more specifically the first and second book of his Gaunt's Ghost series, as well as his Sabbat War book, both of which were fantastic, and I highly recommend them. But overall, I have heard nothing but good praises for Eisenhorn, especially from Dan Abnett. And to be quite honest, I have nothing against the guy. He is a fantastic writer. He has read so many stories that I've always been invested into. And when I finally got the chance to pick up a copy of Eisenhorn for myself, I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Needless to say, this book did not disappoint. And honestly, it gave me a little perspective from the Inquisition side of the story. See, a lot of the Warhammer 40,000 novels I've read up till now have all been about major scale battles ranging from the Astra Militarum with foot soldiers on the ground to the Space Marines taking out massive enemies of the Imperium such as Necrons or demons or whatever the hell else is out there. So to see the Inquisition doing undercover investigations into these types of things themselves was fascinating. It shows their specializations, how they fight, how they think. It gave me an insight to the organization as a whole. So, with Eisenhorn, how the story starts off is he is currently tracking down a target known as A-Clone, a very notorious crook who has been charged with a bunch of murders and other crimes against the Imperium, and he's tracking him down on the ice world of Hubris, a world that is currently in the middle of its hibernation for all of its citizens due to the fact that the planet's orbit essentially has it where half of the time during its orbit around the sun, it is a frozen wasteland, and the other half of the time, it is a tropical paradise. Currently, everyone is in hibernation, and despite the fact that Eisenhorn manages to track down his target and execute A-Clone for his crimes against the Imperium, he comes to find out through further investigation that A-Clone actually took the time to rob a sarcophagus upon Hubris and has sent it off to another world. And tracking it down, he comes to find himself on the planet of Gudrun, which is currently in the middle of a military deployment to add more soldiers and regiments to the ongoing war effort. Through his investigations and even meeting up with another Inquisitor, we come to find out that he's now investigating a very high-class family known as House Glaw. Through his investigations and even being kidnapped by them at one point under torture, we come to find out that House Glaw itself is not exactly clean. We come to find out that they are actually committing horrible acts in the name of Slaanesh, the chaos god of excess pleasure and depravity. Through his investigations, Eisenhorn eventually even runs into the Chaos Space Marine chapter known as the Emperor's Children, whom are also servants of Slaanesh. Now, like I mentioned before, Eisenhorn at one point was tortured to the point of permanent nerve damage, which is huge, and altogether, some of the stuff described was just graphic. And I loved it altogether. Not only that, but we are actually introduced to a new alien species in the first book called the Sarathi. And we learn at one point that this alien empire used to run from one sector to another and used to be very highly advanced. However, they came in contact with the main subject that Eisenhorn is tracking down, the Necrotush, supposedly a tome that allows the secrets of the Chaos Gods to be exposed. But altogether, despite this, it is known heavily as forbidden knowledge for a reason. For anyone who even dares to open up this book is prone to falling to chaos and worshipping the Chaos Gods themselves, despite knowing the secrets of the warp and anything else of that nature. It is forbidden knowledge and very close to finding heresy at this point. So Eisenhorn is investigating not only House Galal and their involvements with the Sarathi, but also the Emperor's children. Along the way, back on Hubris, he had actually met a young woman known as Bequin, whom actually gets her own trilogy further on in the series of Inquisitor itself. But, to put it simply, he finds out that Bequin herself is actually a psychic blank. Those of you who don't know what a blank is someone who has like a bubble around them, where the warp cannot touch them. And anyone who is psychically adept, who has access to the warp or feels like warp sorcery or things like that, they feel ill around these psychic blanks because they're like a bubble where the warp cannot touch them. In a way, it kind of reminds me of the Salamari mentioned in Star Wars' Thrawn trilogy, who also had a similar ability of pushing out the Force. Now, to put it simply, Eisenhorn himself is not a bad character. In fact, I liked his dedication to finding out the truth of what was going on, despite all the odds that were stacked against him. And honestly, he makes for a very compelling character, not to mention his ragtag group of people also inspired a lot of unique individuality, which is something you normally don't see a lot in Warhammer 40,000. However, my main problems with this book mostly stem from real-life frustration. I had spent weeks and weeks trying to read this book and continue it. But overall, real-life things such as, well, for one thing, work, responsibilities, and other things of that nature, wound up leaving me absolutely frustrated and just wanting to get the book over with at that point. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just the frustration of not having finished it, like spending weeks on it and have not finished it. But overall, by the time I finally wrapped up this story, all I felt was relief that it was finally over, which really soured the experience for me. And now I can't even look at the book without feeling like this nagging sense of frustration. It's to that point that when you just look at a book and you feel frustration, you know you need to take a step back for a second. But this book also had a lot of positives for me. For one, not like before, it mentions the Inquisition. Like we get more of an insight into how they run, the three different orders of the Order of Xenos, Malleus, and even Hereticus. We even get to see the Inquisition troops fighting off the Emperor's children alongside the Death Watch, the Space Marine chapter, which I thought was really, really cool. But overall, like I said, I can't help but feel frustration with this story now. And I might revisit it again at some point when I've kind of cooled down with it, maybe after a little while of just reading other books, like taking a step back. I might revisit this again and give it a more positive look. But as of right now, I cannot look at it without feeling a sense of frustration, which, like I said, soured my reading experience with this one. But I think I've rambled enough. Let's move on to the score, shall we? So overall, I feel comfortable at least placing Eisenhorn Xenos at a solid 7 out of 10, because I don't think it's a bad book, but mostly my frustration with just trying to finish it wound up souring the experience for me. Now, for those of you who are interested, I've actually done reviews on 2 other Warhammer novels that are similar to Eisenhorn Xenos, them being the Warhammer crime novels, Bloodlines and Broken City, and I will leave links to the reviews right here. Honestly, you guys, thank you so much again for listening to this crazy man's ramblings, and if you think that I should give Eisenhorn Xenos a second chance further on in the future, let me know in the comments section down below. And I will be checking out more of the Inquisitor series over the course of my readings, and just let me know if you guys have any other recommendations for certain mystery novels that you want me to give my thoughts on. Thank you once again for listening. This is Rambling Collector, signing off.